everybody. Welcome. It would be nice if I had the mic, right, y'all? I'm Miss Marjon, and we are talking about the Juneteenth celebration here in Royal Oak and everything, y'all. We are on our third podcast, Royal Oak Remembers, and I got some amazing guests here in the studio. I've got LaKeesha Morrison and also Leila Peters. What's going on, ladies?
Good afternoon. Hello, hello.
Hello. Let me put this thing down. It's all in the way. But I'm so excited because this is like our third episode.
Yeah.
LaKeesha, you came last time and everything. Let's just do some brief introductions. Tell the crowd, the people. I know if you want to look in the, because we're going to get funky on this one. If you want to look in your camera up here, Leila, you look around. Tell the people who you are. LaKeesha, let's start with you.
Yeah, my name's LaKeesha Morrison, born and raised in Royal Oak. Have a lot of history within the city. I'm rooted in the city. Don't plan on going anywhere. And I'm raising a family in Royal Oak, and I'm a proud Royal Oaker. And I feel like I need to keep my voice running, and being part of the community is something that I always enjoy doing. And there's no better place to do it where my family has been rooted into our community.
Wow. And we're going to dig deep into that in a few minutes. LaKeesha, talking about your family. Now, right next to you got your beautiful niece.
Yes.
Yes, Leila Peters. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Leila Peters. I'm 19 years old, born and raised in Royal Oak. I attended all Royal Oak schools throughout my lifehood, from elementary, middle school, and high school. And I'm proud and blessed to live in Royal Oak.
All right. And you right next to Auntie.
Yes.
Auntie, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, we were talking, I was talking to some of the other guests, and we've got the Juneteenth celebration Thursday, June 19th. Some people don't know. Okay, you got to still spell it out, from 3 to 7 at the farmers market. But let's go right in to our topic. Royal Oak Remembers, Reflection, and Resilience. So let's talk about bridging generations. You both born and raised in Royal Oak. Mm-hmm. What do you remember about being Black in Royal Oak? And what memories, how do memories compare to what you see today in the community in Royal Oak?
It's funny because on our way here, Leila's like, I don't know if I have a lot of memories in Royal Oak because she's half my age.
That's true.
Last time we were here, I mentioned that I was here with my father, who's obviously a generation older than me. And, hearing his stories compared to my stories, living in Royal Oak and raising a family in Royal Oak is like, it's definitely far in between, like, different stories, and having to hear him say things that as if like I'm like mind blown, like that happened while we were growing up. And we were very sheltered in our community because we were one of the only Black families that actually had students inside the Royal Oak schools. So from pre-K all the way through high school, preschool, my family and my cousins were the only Black students in Royal Oak. Maybe there was a couple extra ones, but we'd never seen them. I never encountered my first Black teacher was in high school. So
get out.
I am not joking.
What year? What were you?
I was year 2003.
Okay, but what were you, a junior, senior, freshman?
Freshman year.
Freshman year. You saw your first Black
teacher.
Okay.
First Black teacher that I ever had. Now, it's unfortunate to have to go through, elementary, middle school, and not be able to see a reflection of myself and someone that I can lean on and talk to and communicate and understand the struggles that I went through in school. And unfortunately, again, my parents did the best that they could, put us into schools where we can get good education. And unfortunately, sometimes we fall short of that as well. Having to learn about my history through the eyes of white people was it was rough.
I bet.
And having to learn it in such a way that I was embarrassed to be Black in Royal Oak and to be Black around all my peers of white color. That's kind of hard to see. And, people question, then why would you bring life into Royal Oak and be able to have your offsprings in the same schools that you went to? And it's, because I want them to see the things that I seen and know that like you can push through and become a bigger and better person than they would ever
Wow.
think that you would ever be. And so Layla, I feel like having her cousins with her through school and, having Black mothers in the home and, having those conversations with us. And I'm not sure when you had a Black teacher.
Mine was in middle school, and I honestly never had a Black teacher. I like would see like other classmates that had them, but I personally never had my own. And but I didn't until middle school. And like throughout my elementary, it was predominantly just like just white students, and I didn't really experience like having people who looked like me until middle school and high school. And being able to like have that, like it was definitely amazing because I learned so many different things how to wear my hair. I had friends so I could ask questions, which before, like in elementary school, I remember growing up and I didn't really. I was it was just definitely different. I would say I wasn't really like. I learned so many like different things going into middle school and high school because it was so like diverse, and it was definitely
I
different. I
bet.
would say.
I bet. Well, if you're just joining us, we are talking about not only the Royal Oak Juneteenth celebration going down June 19th, 3 to 7. The topic is Royal Oak Remembers, Reflection and Resilience. Now, LaKeesha and I know your beautiful niece here, Layla, please tell us about your family. Let's dig right
Yeah,
in because then I want to talk about what Juneteenth means
yeah,
moving forward.
of
But
course.
tell us about your family.
Yeah. So before, we actually, me, myself, and my family and my cousins established like going to schools in Royal Oak, our history actually was more than just students at Royal Oak and residents. Our ancestors were one of the first Black pioneering families in Royal Oak. It wasn't something where they were slaves in Royal Oak. No, they were freedom seekers.
Say that again.
They were freedom seekers. So we're
Okay.
trying to remove the word slave runners or, runaway slaves. We're changing that now. We're changing it to freedom seekers because we are more than just runaways. We are people that are looking for that American dream. That's something that we should have been given the moment we touched the soil. My family had were the first Black pioneering families in Royal Oak. They came
Wow.
from Covington, Kentucky. Elizabeth, who is my great 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 grandmother, I have to like
Make sure you get all those greats in there.
get those greats in
Yeah.
there. She was pregnant at the time when she fled, and unfortunately, we don't know if she left behind children. And
Wow.
there's letters between her husband, and their slave owners, saying that you something in the thought of they left children in Covington, Kentucky. So
Mhm.
being pregnant and possibly leaving children behind is something where, as a Black mother and as a mother in general, like how can someone leave their children behind, but then how can you raise more kids in a home where they're going to either be sold or abused or worked for free, and,
Right.
and and having to do those things in the home. It's just very sad. So I sympathize with Elizabeth, who left with her husband. So when they ran away, they crossed the Ohio River, made their way up into Canada, when we know that it was free at that point.
Right.
And
Right.
along the way, there was the Underground Railroad. And it's not something where you're underground. You're not like, taking a
Yeah.
train.
Speak it.
It's something where you are, it's a network of people, Black and white people, trying to achieve freedom for everyone. So they made their way up into Canada, stayed there until Charlie, who was born in Canada, was a couple years old. And in that time, Elizabeth stayed in Canada, and Henry went into Michigan, Detroit, auto. A lot of things were happening in Detroit. So he went to
Mm.
Detroit, tried to find a living for his family and finding work. And when they did end up finding work, he went back to Canada and brought Elizabeth back into Detroit. They found a home, which was the Royal Oak Township. So the township was more than just Royal Oak, the city. You're looking at Birmingham, Ferndale, Berkeley, things surrounding areas of Royal Oak. So
Right.
they made their way back into Royal Oak and established a living. They purchased acres of land. And a lot of the times you would hear people say, oh, they were given 7 acres and a mule. And it's like, no, although we probably should have been given that, but no, they were hard workers. Elizabeth was a midwife and she was a nanny, and she worked for the prominent family in Royal Oak, the Starr family. Henry was a farmer. He would sell fruits and vegetables in Detroit and off of his farm in Royal Oak. So they ended up purchasing 7 acres of land. So can you imagine being Black and actually purchasing acres of land in the,
Right.
mid 1860s.
Right.
And it wasn't until 1865 where technically they weren't free, but they established a living in Royal Oak, but they still weren't free. So when they found out that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, and then they found out that they were free, because we think that they were here before 1965, possibly 1860s.
Right.
And by 1865, Elizabeth and them hear the news that Abraham Lincoln has passed away. So Henry came all the way from Detroit to give this news to his wife. And, obviously they were all upset because Abraham Lincoln did, I wouldn't say give freedom, because we had people that actually fought in wars to give us that freedom. But, at that point, everybody was upset and sad that you've got a president that was murdered. But in 1865, at this point, they've already established a home. They've got these acres. They have children. At this point, they have 6 children. And everyone was contribute to Royal Oak. They were watching families, they were delivering babies, they were making towels and the cattle, the ring around their neck, the cattle bills. Yes. So, they were known for that as well. So,
wow. Very innovative and creative,
yes.
Yeah. And let me just ask you real quick, LaKeesha, first of all, we're talking to LaKeesha Morrison and her niece, Leila Peters. They're talking about their family, the first pioneers in Royal Oak. Okay?
One of the first pioneers.
One of the first.
Yes.
One of the first
Yes.
in Royal Oak. And that was what I was going to ask you.
Yes.
By this time, was it becoming more diverse, more Blacks? Were they in the nation?
No, because in the census, there was a couple Black families. But some of the times, these Black families could have been Native Americans. And the crazy part is, you've got Native Americans who could still not own land. So they either would change their race to African Americans to pass as African Americans to buy this land. But you've got Native Americans who still can't purchase land, and they were here even before.
For us.
Before
Wow.
us. Yeah.
Wow. Layla, man, I don't even, y'all got me stumped.
Speechless.
Yeah, speechless, because I got some more questions. I'm going to pivot a little bit, but Layla, how does that feel growing up in that type of richness like that type of legacy?
Honestly, it's honestly just very overwhelming in a sense, because just learning all of this from a young age, it's like, wow, that's my family, my bloodline, knowing that I came from one of the first Black one of the first Black families to come to Michigan, to Royal Oak. It was honestly just shocking, and just knowing all the journey that they had to take just to come up here, and just the sacrifice that they made. It's just honestly wow, I just couldn't fathom it, to be honest.
Yeah. And that's why I asked, because when we talked to some of our other guests, some of, the youth, and we were talking about, the same thing, because now your generation or the young generation, they don't have a clue. They're so sheltered. You mentioned being sheltered, LaKeesha, but now it's about the iPhones, the video games. They don't even play outside. So the history, they don't even care.
Yeah.
They don't want to sit. Big Mama's gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's funny because when I mentioned earlier, when going to an all-white school and you have white teachers teaching you about your history and pulling out that history book and seeing slaves depicted as animals and things like that. And, being embarrassed to see those pictures, it's just disheartening. And then going home to ask our parents questions. So when I say that we were sheltered, I didn't know what the N-word was until I was 6th grade. My parents didn't want us to know about hateful things like that. But they did instill a lot of like good things, like, you know, the excellence of Black history and Black women and Black men in America. Every Saturday we would have like Black History Day with my parents. And, you know, we would always be told, you know, what our ancestors had did for us to get us to where we're at right now. And to have that still enriched in our blood, but also physically have, because we are the longest living landowners in Royal Oak.
Wait, say that again.
The longest living landowners in Royal Oak. And to put emphasis on Black.
Okay, let's back it up. Back it up. You said say that again.
We are the longest living landowners in Royal Oak.
Not Black, but just period.
Just period. Period.
Let me tell you something. Okay. All right. You heard it here. Longest living. Okay. And you still, let's fast forward a little bit now, because you still have the land.
Yes, we still have a portion of the land.
Okay.
Yep. And obviously after every generation, a little bit is sold. But as of right now, we have just under an acre that is still in our possession. So you're going back to early 1860s, maybe even 1850s.
Right.
To have this land that is still in our family.
Wow. Oh, gosh. You know, LaKeesha, here's the thing. Y'all got me stumped because, you know, I think it's, you know, we got about 10 minutes left because I knew this time was going to fly by. Before we talk about what role can the city and its residents play in honoring the legacy and getting ready for Juneteenth, let's dig in a little bit deeper. How has that been, trying to keep the land? You know, I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's not like you have this, and let's just be real and go raw. It's not like this piece of land is in Detroit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's not. I'm just being honest. When you think of Royal Oak, we've said it in other episodes. We don't, you know, and Monica did a great job talking about how diverse it is. And it is diverse, but sometimes you have certain people who don't think of it as diverse.
Yeah. I'm one of those people. It's not as diverse as I would like it to be.
Okay. Yeah.
We still need
That's real.
We still need to see more people in our city that I can look and say, okay, I see you.
Right.
I see you. And I want you here.
Right. And just both of you, please chime in. What has it been like trying, not only being the longest landowners, but what has it been like as generation has, you know, each generation has came through. Like you said, baby boomer, Gen Z, Gen X, millennial. What has that been like, trying to preserve and keep the land so you can keep your name?
So like you said, there's not enough time in the day to discuss what it is to be a descendant of greatness. But to keep that land is something that is true to my heart. You know, we've had offers where anybody would have been like, absolutely, I'll take it. And you just can't. You can't put value on something like that.
Say it.
You cannot put value on something that my ancestors worked so hard for us to have generation after generation. Because if you got 7 acres and they had 6 children, they bought an acre for each of their children. So for me, I'm going to do my hardest to keep that in the family. So Leila can see that land in her family. They can come out and play in the yard because, you know, growing up in Royal Oak, we had one of the biggest yards in Royal Oak. So we had a lot of kids come. We had parties there. A lot of kids come and hang out, and that was the place to be. But growing up and knowing that this is a land that my ancestors left behind for us, it's an amazing story. And how do we continue their legacy? By opening our mouths and talking about them, changing parks, putting parks in my ancestors' names. You know, with the help of Leila and the kids and the grandkids, they gave me drive to push for, you know, acknowledgments for my family. So right now, Royal Oak just has their first Black park named after a Black family, and that's can't pronounce it. Hamer Finch Wilkins Park. So that's 3 generations.
Yes.
So Elizabeth and Henry Hamer.
And give that again.
It's Hamer Finch Wilkins Park.
Yes, for those of you who are listening or watching. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's right down the street from the homestead that is still standing. You've got the cemetery that's very close to them, and they're one of the first Black families that is buried in the Royal Oak Cemetery. So, like, there's a lot of roots.
Yes. Let me pivot a little bit. Layla, your generation, your friend, I know you talked about you just didn't have any clue, or not any clue, but you're just so honored to have this in your family. How do you intend on, and I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but not too much. I know you can do it.
Yeah.
How do you intend on continuing the legacy, in your own way?
Honestly, well, through our Juneteenth celebration, I brought out a lot of my friends to realize, like, or to be able to see all that my ancestors and other ancestors have come out, and to be able to, like, celebrate, like, the freedom that they took. And for, like, the park itself, I've had my friends come out and I've shared the stories of my ancestors. And, like, not even only that, but, like, with the home that, like, still is on 12 Mile and Crooks, I believe. Um, I, like, honestly want to work with my aunt to be able to see what we can do, to keep it in the family, like, in the generation, and, like, making, like, if we want to make any changes to the home, for future, like, families that may want to move in there and, like, live in there. That's, like, kind of just in a sense of a way that I would like to be able to, keep that in my family.
I love it, because here's the thing: you're staying in your lane. That's why I asked that question, because it's so key that you don't do what your aunt, your mother, your uncles, the elders, but you're doing what fits you. So that's amazing. We've got about 6 minutes, but I want to spend the rest of this time talking about this event that's coming up, and what's the takeaway, LaKeesha?
Yeah.
We've heard other people's perspective of what this is what we want people, like, we even talked about what to expect, but what is the takeaway?
The takeaway.
Yes.
The takeaway is to bring knowledge and bring more youth to our community, because they're the one that's leading the torch.
Right.
I can only go so far, and they're going to have to take it from there. But to educate is my biggest thing, is, like, I want to make sure that Layla's generation, the generation under her, are going to take away, like, I learned about Juneteenth when I was 5 years old, 6 years old. I learned that, it was a sore spot in America, but we're learning and we're doing better. And, we want to make sure that there's equity and diversity and inclusion for everyone. This is not just a celebration for Black families and Black people in America. It's for everyone.
Right.
It's everyone to celebrate that finally we are all on the same page when it comes to freedom. We might have been not 100% free when we were told in 1865, whatever day that was, but everybody wasn't free. Did we forget that we left a whole state of people in Texas?
Yes. Yeah.
And we can't even say we didn't forget, because I think that was done purposely.
Wow.
Let's do the last harvest. Let's use them a little bit longer. They can't read or write.
Right.
So this is our time to acknowledge these faults and do better, and, celebrate too at the same time, because we are more than just a storybook. We are here.
Right. Right. If you're just joining us, man, you missed a mouthful, but make sure you catch not only just this episode, everybody, but the other 2 episodes as well. But we are in the studio right now with Leila Peters and also LaKeesha Morrison. They've been talking about the elders, their family that have managed to preserve their land in Royal Oak, Michigan. Let me be clear and say that, in Royal Oak, Michigan. Google it if you don't know what I'm talking about, right? So kudos to both of you. We got about 4 minutes or so, but also, we talked about, like, what to expect as far as, like, it's outside and all that, but as we move forward, especially with all the legacy, the heritage that you've got, we've got reflection and resilience. I just want to talk about also just really briefly, LaKeesha, the challenges as we move forward, because it's more than just one day, y'all.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We got a major battle going on right now in 2025. So I want to end it like that. Some food for thought. With that in mind, what are we going to do past this day?
I mean, we're going to have to do some research. You have to do the research on your own and then ask questions.
Right.
You've got more, like you said, holidays to celebrate. Kwanzaa. do people know about that? We're going to have to open up these books and look at more history of Black excellence. And it doesn't stop at Martin Luther King. You have to open your Rosa Parks. There has to be more than just these two people. And Royal Oak, that's all we learned. And I feel like we've got to be able to be, don't slow yourself down. Do some footwork. Do the work.
Yes. Leila, what you got? I know you're in college. And with all of this history, and then you're in school right now.
So, yeah, actually just in school, I had two major projects that I ended up doing. And I was able to, for one of them, explain like the migration. The prompt was what was your family's migration to Michigan? And I was able to tell this beautiful story of my family being like the first Black pioneers to come to Royal Oak, Michigan, the city that I'm born and raised in, and just like explain the whole entire journey that they took. And my professors even like just thanked me for being able to tell like this beautiful story in their own words, that they said that left like so much that they want to learn now. And also another thing was for my writing project where I talked about what was like one of the most important things that you learned throughout your life. And I talked about Juneteenth and because, I never really knew too much. And when my aunt brought like Juneteenth to Royal Oak, I was able to learn so much and help out in my own community. And like, I just felt like that changed who I was as a person. And I definitely am so thankful for my aunt and everything that she's done for our family.
Oh, boy, y'all gonna have me crying up in here because I'm telling you, this is so beautiful, y'all. I'm telling you, thank you so much. This is reflection and resilience, but I'm telling you, so much more. I see so many other episodes. I told LaKeesha that because there's so much we can nitpick about the journey that your elders took. And even the journey of keeping this land. I didn't want to, y'all, I'm telling you, I can feel it. It's more than just, cutting the grass, making sure the house is clean. Because you got people out there who are hating because of that history that you got.
It's funny that you say that because I feel like any Black people that go out in the community, you have these ancestors that are around you. And like right now, I just feel like, my ancestors are in this room, like we're rooting for you. You're our wildest dream. Yes. I want you to continue that torch. Yes. So I feel like this is what I'm meant to do.
Amen. Like I said in the last podcast episode, pass the collection plate, because this is some serious nuggets and some serious change, because this is where it starts. Besides doing a podcast episode, y'all, we gotta, and I know your family's gonna be there. We've got it. I'll put it on there. Royal Oak Juneteenth celebration Thursday, June 19th, 3 to 7 at the farmer's market. Make sure you come through. LaKeesha and her family, Leila. Everybody's gonna be there. So definitely please come down. So thank you so much. Thank you, y'all.
Of course.
All right, y'all.
Thank you.
Till next time, y'all. Y'all make sure to have a happy Juneteenth, everybody.